In today's episode, we're pulling back the curtain on the realities of modern obstetric care. My guest will take us behind the scenes, exposing the hidden factors that shape the typical patient experience with their OB. Why appointments often feel rushed, why so many doctors seem burnt out, and what it really takes to provide personalized, high-quality care. She's an experienced OBGYN who built a thriving practice but found herself completely drained by the relentless demands of the medical system. Instead of walking away from medicine, she made a bold move. She completely transformed her practice model. What happens when a doctor steps away from the high volume insurance driven system to create a more sustainable, patient centered approach? And what lessons can both healthcare providers and expectant parents take from her journey? I'm pregnancy focused chiropractor Dr. Elliot Berlin, and you're listening to the Informed Pregnancy Podcast. Dr. Melissa Drake, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Just by everything I know about how you run your practice, if I get pregnant, I'm coming to see you.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Let's start at the beginning. What drew you to medicine in the first place?
I don't come from a medical family necessarily. My dad was a planetary geochemist. My mom was a librarian. My brother ended up going into medicine. He's a pulmonary critical care doc, but we always were very interested in science, always interested in how the human body worked. But I was always really interested in helping people and always really just drawn to that aspect of it. I got specifically interested in women's health in medical school itself. I initially thought I wanted to be a dermatologist. I liked skin. I liked, skin ailments. I have terrible eczema.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering, were you one of those teenage girls that just spent hours doing skin?
No, actually, weirdly, I was one of those teenage girls who couldn't apply anything to her skin because I had atopic triad.
Okay. That's our first thing we have in common. We didn't apply anything to our skin.
Exactly. I had to dance around with lactic acid lotion because I was so eczematous. So yeah, I thought I wanted to be a dermatologist.
Oh my God. If I start a band, it's going to be called Eczematous.
Metal. Super metal.
Yes. Very metal. Okay. Sorry. Back to you.
But no, I had a negative experience with OBGYN when I was a medical student. I had a really nasty experience with an OBGYN. I had a bad experience with a pap smear, with some results and with getting results conveyed, and then with another procedure. And I had somebody during the procedure sort of not give any, I was a busy student. I should have probably looked up what the procedure was. I probably should have informed myself a little bit more, but I didn't. So I sort of showed up blind to this procedure. I didn't really get much in the way of any information about it, much in the way of any consent. I'm sure I signed a consent form, but I got into the stirrups and then had a biopsy performed with really no conversation, no kind of heads up. And, a biopsy on the cervix really hurts. I mean, it can hurt.
You say you know. I don't really know, but
it doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
Everyone has varying degrees of discomfort on the cervix. Some people feel a lot. Some people don't feel much.
But I noticed that as a doula.
Yeah. Like anybody who says there are no nerves on the cervix.
Oh, yeah.
Because, they were telling us that even when I was a student.
Oh,
it's totally absurd.
Yeah. No, because I've seen people, as a doula, I've witnessed people have the Foley balloon placement.
Oh, yeah.
And some people are like, oh, did you do it? And then other people are screaming in agony. I mean, really
or
tough,
vomiting or
people. Yeah, big reactions. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. So throughout that series of unfortunate events, is it primarily bedside manner that was the issue?
Yeah. So this person I yelped and started to tear up, and this person sort of came up from between my legs and said, I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of it. You shouldn't be crying. Wow. And I was so embarrassed because I was a medical student. I felt like I really should have had a better handle on myself. I don't know.
Wow.
So anyway, I left the appointment, never went back. It was a terrible experience. I probably got fired as a patient, and I did not get another pap smear for years.
Oh my.
It was terrible. It was also, I really got into my head. I was I was like, I never want anyone to feel this way. I never want to feel this way. That was really what drove me into women's health. And that's really how I approach all of my appointments. Anybody who shows up for a PAP, some people are really anxious. Some people just want to get it over with. But some people are like, look, I haven't been in years. And it may be because they had a previous bad experience. And I tell them, I'm like, look, we don't even have to do it today. The fact that you made it in the door is fantastic. We can just talk it out. We can go in and do an exam. We don't have to. We can always do something else later. Just
Right.
acknowledging that
Right.
there may be trauma from the past
It
is
was sort of
helpful
a
to
joke
people.
when I opened up and I said, if I get pregnant, I'm coming to see you. But like, there are things, I'm 50, like, that it would be nice if doctors had your refreshing approach, you know, just for other medical things, like colonoscopy, let's say.
Yeah.
A little spooky, but it's like if you have
Yeah.
somebody like warm and gets it and explains everything and sort of holds your hand through it, then I think even just for medical safety, like you're saying, you didn't get a pap smear for years. I think people push off these medical procedures for years and sometimes till it's too late because they're just not good experiences.
100%. I think there's something that I think the medical community does not acknowledge about the fact that a lot of the stuff that we do is unfortunately unpleasant. Exams, injections, surgical procedures, dental work. So much of this stuff can be, unfortunately, unpleasant. There's a ton we can do to make it less so. And there's a ton we
Mhm.
can do to make it more comfortable for people and just more pleasant. But there's a
Right.
lot that we have to answer for as a profession. You're totally right in terms of bad health outcomes for people because people have been avoidant about it because it's scary.
Right. I mean, I could have something unpleasant, but feel safe. And
Yeah,
then my fight or flight response isn't going off, I'm not loaded with adrenaline. Like it's not a war zone where my body feels like, why are you not running for your life right now? And just
absolutely.
using everything I have to just stay there and endure it. That can be turned off, just with some simple interactions, just human kindness, warmth
Absolutely.
interactions and explaining things. And, I could even see, joking about it once the climate feels right. And then going in, I see, also from my work in birth is that, if someone's laughing, they body knows they're not in danger.
Yeah,
And so if you can get to
absolutely.
that point, you can have a much more pleasant experience doing almost anything.
I
Um,
always say you can't be scared and laughing.
right, exactly. If you got that smile on, it's like the adrenaline's leaving your body. Okay, so when you had that experience as a med student, were you already doing rotations?
I had not done rotations yet. So that was, I think it was like a first or second year. Yeah, when I started rotations, I was nervous because I was like, oh man, OBGYN was presented to me. I don't think I'll ever forget this quote. OBGYN was, the various groups came in and they were like, well, here's what we do as internal med. Here's what we do as surgeons. Here's what we do as blah, blah, blah. The OBGYNs came in and they said, we are the kind of people that wake up at 4 in the morning, run a marathon, and then go to work. And I was like, oh my God, man, I don't know if that is for me. I like to sleep. I don't know if I can wake up at 4 in the morning and do that. I don't know if this is for me. So
So you went
when
and
I,
did it.
so I, started doing it. I did that rotation first because I was like, I got to tear this band-aid off. I really got to make sure that this is a thing I can do. And I fell in love with it. People who do birth and birth work find that they really either love it or they don't.
It
And
seems like you have
I
to
fell
love
in
it
love with
to
it.
keep doing it.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean that description's not wrong, especially for private practice. I always wonder, like, even for me doing birth work as a body worker, as a doula, the difference between going to sleep with both eyes closed and the phone off
Yeah.
is worlds apart from going to sleep with one eye open and the phone on.
100%. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so even if you're not waking up at 4 o'clock, you're not asleep at 4 o'clock.
Yep. Yep.
So you specialize in OB, which takes a long time also.
Yeah, I mean, not as long as like brain surgery. Like for neurosurgeons, they seem like they're, 70 when they come out of residency. Those poor guys. It's 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency, which I'm sure feels like an eternity, but it's not as long as some.
And then do you go from there to private practice?
From there, I did, yeah. So I did 4 years of medical school at University of Arizona, and then I did 4 years of residency at George Washington University in DC. and then came out to Santa Barbara.
What drew you to Santa Barbara?
My husband's job, actually. So
Oh,
he
that'll
is
do
a
it.
fertility doc. Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
they very rarely have open jobs anywhere. So they occasionally have an open job here and there, 3 or 4 open jobs anywhere at a time in the country. And he had an open job here in Santa Barbara. We came out and I thought, no big deal. I'm a generalist OBGYN. This is going to be a breeze. Someone's going to want to hire a young generalist OBGYN. It's a small town. There's some older folks here. Someone's going to want to get a new partner, a young person, a hungry young person. I did not anticipate at all how difficult it would be to break into the OB scene here.
Oh, really?
And oh, yeah, it was tough. It was really, really tough
Hmm.
to get hospital privileges initially,
Oh,
to
really? Just getting privileges.
just even getting privileges. To get hospital privileges here, you have to have 2 people who will sign for you. And when signing for you means that you would potentially be a competitor,
Oh,
it's
right.
really
Who's going
tough.
to do that? Yeah, I mean, it is, at the end of
Exactly.
the day, it is a business.
Yeah.
And right,
Yeah.
there's competition going on. Oh, wow.
Exactly.
I never
So
even thought about it from that perspective.
yeah. And I,
Wow.
of course, had no idea at the time. I look back on my poor, naive little self, and I just had no clue. So, I'm, sending out my CV and a cover letter and just not getting any response. And I had no idea why. So, for a while there, I was doing gynecology only. A very kind gynecologist here, Dr. Duncan Turner, gave me some space for which to do gynecology out of his office. And I was doing gynecology only because I couldn't get hospital privileges to do OB.
Wow. How'd you overcome that?
Somebody hired me. So I was hired and finally was able to break into the OB scene and was in a group practice for a while and then eventually branched out on my own.
All right. That practice, based on the introduction that I heard myself say, led you down a path that I think most doctors today, especially OBGYNs, end up in that didn't quite work well with your life. And you took a big turn. Let's take a little break. When we come back, we'll find out what that was like for you and why the turn and where you are now. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are talking to Dr. Melissa Drake. Okay, so from skin to OB through an unpleasant experience, to say the least. And then you moved to Santa Barbara and you're struggling to get privileges and break in. And then you do get privileges and you're in what sounds like a typical practice, like a sort of a volume practice.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's that experience like for you? I mean, it's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah. So I sort of broke out on my own, started seeing patients solo, and I didn't have a ton of focus, I would say, in terms of practice management, in terms of how to structure things, I guess. I also had a sense of, if I had to say I had any overarching practice management philosophy, it would really be just a sense of service to community. I wanted to just
Hmm.
serve the community.
Hmm.
And that meant take every kind of insurance. The only insurance I didn't take was emergency Medi-Cal. Those patients would go to the county. I took everything from CenCal to Anthem Blue Cross. And I essentially didn't say no to any appointments. I had my staff eventually was like, you have to cap the number of births you're going to get. Because the most intense month I had, I think I delivered 45 patients in the
Holy
month.
cow, that's a baby and a
And
half every day.
it is. They were whole babies. That was my biggest
Thanks for
month.
clarifying, Doc.
My lightest months were never less than 30. And so my staff was like, you have got to start capping. You cannot do more than 35. But so I capped at 35 births eventually. But I never capped or stopped taking certain insurance plans. I was consistently told, like, you really should stop taking CenCal. You should stop taking CenCal. They're your lowest payer. But so many teachers in town, there were so many just like really lovely folks on CenCal, I really couldn't justify not taking it anymore.
Service the community.
Um, that's the thing. I just was like, I have too many lovely folks using it, so I can't stop taking it.
Can you
Um,
explain for a minute? Because I think a lot of people don't think about it. I have insurance for my family that costs a fortune of money, and I think
Same.
probably 20% of the doctors we go to take it. and
Yeah.
80% of the doctors we go to don't take it. And I don't
Yeah.
take insurance, and now I assume you don't take insurance. So, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But can you explain? I know how it is from the chiropractic perspective, but from an OB perspective, what is the difference for you for somebody who has, let's say, insurance that's a better insurance that's a less quality insurance, and somebody who just pays out of pocket?
Yeah. So this is the wacky thing about insurance, and this is why I was so busy. I didn't even have a moment to sit down and take an admin day, for instance, to wrap my brain around what any of this meant. But a pregnancy and birth is billed globally, similar to how a surgery is billed. Surgeries are billed globally, meaning the actual surgical procedure and then a certain period of time after the surgery, including post-operative visits, and then any period of time after that. I don't know what it is for surgeries. I think it's like 90 days. That's all included in like a global package. So the insurance will pay a fee for this entire period of care. So for pregnancy, it's the prenatal package. So it's a however many prenatal visits there are. So if you see the doctor 5 times, 13 times, whatever, and then the birth, and then 1 or 2 postpartum visits, that entire package of visits is a single fee. That's what your doctor will get paid.
Hmm.
And so in the United States, when people talk about like my birth cost $30,000, my birth cost 15,000, you hear about these insane prices that people are paying for their births. And that's an uncomplicated birth in the United States. That's not counting a NICU stay or, God forbid, an ICU stay for somebody. So, I mean, you hear about these things. People are
Yeah,
paying these ungodly amounts of money for their births. That is not going to the doctor
right.
because for that global pregnancy and birth package, 13 prenatal visits, a delivery, which, for some people, that's 4 hours of care for me, delivery. For some people, that's 12 hours plus of care.
Yeah.
And then 2 postpartum visits. SenCal was paying like $1,500. And
Hmm.
my highest payer, which was Anthem Blue Cross, I believe at the time, was paying, I think, $2,400.
Hmm.
And that really sort of just boils down. That tells you why people are being rushed through their appointments in most offices. That tells you why so many doctors have to operate at scale.
I mean, that's
Because
not very much per hour. Even if you're moving fairly quick, it's not very much per
that's
hour. And
exactly,
especially in light of, the expense of running an office.
exactly. So,
Just
I
malpractice
mean,
insurance alone on the other side.
malpractice insurance, and then you have like slip and fall insurance for your waiting room, and then you have health insurance for your own employees,
Oh,
you
yes, and
know?
workers' comp and
Exactly, because your own employees are usually in healthcare going to be young women who are
uh-huh.
also needing their own healthcare, getting pregnant themselves, which is legit. That's what we all do. And you want to pay them a fair wage. You want them to have their own good health insurance. You want to make sure they have paid leave. You want to make sure they can go out and like take their kid to soccer practice or take a sick day for their kid. You
Right.
know,
So
those
the
kind
amount
of
you need
things.
to earn to make your first profit dollar in a month is substantial. And
Yeah,
if that's the hourly rate essentially that you're getting because of that global package, you have to see a lot of people just to break even, let alone
you
turn a
do.
profit. And so you end up, I mean, 45 babies in a month, that doesn't sound like you even have time for the marathon. It just sounds like you wake up at 4 in the morning, deliver a marathon of
Having gone to
babies.
bed at 3:30.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just so taxing on the body. And
Yeah,
understandably, people want more time with the doctor and
absolutely.
really
And they
sort of
just, and that's the
deserve
thing
more
is
time.
people deserve more time. Pregnancy care is a time that really affects the entire lifespan. So it's a time where it shouldn't be rushed. You shouldn't have a 5-minute visit after waiting for a month. That's not how any of this should work. When you do a 5-minute visit after waiting for a month, and then you wait another month and have another 5-minute visit, and then we have bad health outcomes, nobody should be shocked at that,
Sure. I mean, that makes sense.
you know?
Right. And people don't like the group model where you have a group and you don't have a doctor assigned to you per se. You just see whoever you see, even though that
It's
makes
not ideal.
it's
It's
not
not
ideal, but
ideal.
it's not ideal for the
Yeah,
patient. But if you're
exactly.
seeing that many patients, it makes the life of a doctor a little bit more livable.
Yeah,
I mean, the way you're describing it just sounds like it's impossible just to have your own healthy life, never mind
yeah,
be, someone's spouse or someone's parent, and those people depending on you, and you're not able to be there for them. And so, yeah, I suppose that's one of the reasons why there's a high burnout rate among obstetricians.
yeah, absolutely.
And also, we're human. I
Yeah.
mean, you have high stakes there. Like humans make mistakes, and humans who haven't slept make more mistakes. And
That's one of the most interesting things. So, my oldest daughter is in the Air Force, and she took some time after she graduated. She went to UCLA, she graduated, and she took some time before she got orders. And she took that time, she was working for a private jet company, and she was scheduling the flights. And the aviation industry takes pilot health and specifically pilot fatigue so seriously. And she was doing all this scheduling and she would take this extremely seriously. She would say, you should be on the phone scheduling these guys. And she would be like, well, this guy can't fly. He's grounded. He's had too many hours. I've got to get him a hotel. I've got to make sure he gets enough sleep. It's not safe for him to be piloting at all for at least another 18 to 24 hours because I've got to make sure he's rested. This is serious stuff. And I'd be like, my God, think about it.
right,
If only we took medical care that seriously. We've
right.
got doctors that are completely fatigued doing care. It's wild.
Doing surgery, sometimes doing emergency surgery, it's not under the, smoothest of circumstances. Yeah, is a recipe for disaster. So you left that model.
Yeah, I had to.
Was there a breaking point?
I got so unhealthy. So I truly, like, we talked about the complete lack of a sleep. Like, there were moments when you're doing that many births. Thinking back on it, it's hard to even talk about what the sleep schedule was like because I would be waking up at like 5 in the morning, going to round in the hospital, round on patients before the office started at 8. So I'd round on anybody that was laboring and anybody that was postpartum. Office would start at 8. I'd see patients throughout the morning, hoping not to have to dash out for a delivery in the morning. Before I would leave the hospital, I would grab a free coffee, and then a free croissant or something like that in the doctor's lounge. That would be my breakfast. I would come over.
Wow, two different types of vitamin C, coffee and croissant.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know how I didn't get scurvy in this time period, but like, I don't know how my scars didn't open up and my teeth fell out. And then I would, hopefully complete the morning, come back at lunchtime to complete the rest of the rounding, see anybody who else was, if anybody was still laboring, I'd check in on them, complete the rest of the postpartum rounds, take any more free food that I could find, get another coffee, maybe an energy drink, come back to the office for the afternoon, hopefully not have to dash out for a birth in the middle of the afternoon, although I'd often have to do that. I had a fantastic nurse midwife that I worked with who, if I had to dash out for a birth, could complete the afternoon appointments and then I'd come back and finish the rest. When I was finished with the afternoon appointments, I'd go back to the hospital, check in on people again, and then go home, usually 6 p.m. Then I would finally be able to look at labs. I'd look at labs, make phone calls to patients about any lab results while usually like watching the news, which is of course, great for your cortisol levels in the middle of
All
COVID.
right.
My poor kids would be like, hello, are you still there? I'd be on the computer making phone calls,
Yeah, it's
sending
an
emails,
impossible life. It's impossible.
maybe fall asleep around midnight. And then most phone calls are coming in because most births happen between 2 and 4 in the morning. So
Oh,
then, you have a birth almost every night. I'd be back at the hospital between 2 and 4, hopefully get back around 4:30, back up at 6 a.m.
wow.
So I just kept doing that over and over. And
That's insane.
eventually,
You could almost understand sort of why, like, a young med student would have a doctor who comes in and just doesn't have the wherewithal to give her proper informed consent and spend time with her. And I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying,
yeah,
like, you end up on that treadmill that just gets faster and faster, and then hurdles pop up. You're just trying to stay on the treadmill without falling off, juggle the
yeah,
balls without dropping any. And it's easy to see where patient care just falls apart.
totally.
All right, so you moved away from that. I want to find out about your new model of care and how it's working out for you. Let's take one
Yeah.
more break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking to my new general physician, Dr. Melissa Drake.
Here for you.
Thanks. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if you knew Dr. Jay Goldberg. I've told this story on the podcast before, but when I went to Cedars-Sinai with COVID, like alpha COVID, one of the first people around here who got COVID, and I was in the ICU trying to stay alive. And somehow he knew, OB that I'd worked with many times, he knew that I was in the hospital. I don't even know how he knew I was in the ICU. And he sent a sweet text message that just said, I'm so sorry you're here today as a patient and not as a provider. And if
Yeah.
there's anything I could do for you at all, personally or professionally, don't hesitate to reach out. And I immediately started thinking to myself, like, you're an OBGYN. What are you going to do for me professionally? So as a joke, I just wrote, well, I haven't had a pap smear in forever. And without a beat, he wrote back, I'll be right up.
I love
So
that.
it made me laugh, which we said is great medicine. And I started breathing and I came home soon after that. Okay. So
Fantastic.
back to you. So the burnout, it's very real. I think people can start understanding. We want our doctors to take our insurance. We want our doctors to be easy to get into, be able to see me
Yeah.
next week. We want our doctors to spend a lot of time with us and be very thorough and never make mistakes. But
Yeah.
those things kind of work against each other for like doctors are human. There's only so much you can do. Something's got to give. And for you, it sounds like patient care wasn't what you were ready to give on.
No, no.
So what's your
And
new
that was the thing
model?
is like even throughout my whole I described it, the practice felt like a Mustang that was running away. Like I was on the back of a Mustang, like a wild Mustang. And I was holding on to the mane of it and I couldn't get control of it. It was just running away with me.
Yeesh.
I still couldn't do 5 minute visits with people. I just can't do it. So
Right.
if somebody's crying in your office and like pouring their heart out to you, I cannot interrupt somebody and say, I'm sorry, our time's up.
Don't just
I
set the
just
timer
can't.
when they come in.
I'm physically incapable of it. I simply
Yeah.
cannot do it. The people that know me, like, know I'm incapable of doing that. I'm way too talkative.
So tell me
So
about
I
your
was,
practice now.
yeah. So when I reopened, I thought, the people that really know how to do obstetrical care are the midwives. They've always known how to do it. I call them like the keepers of the flame because they've been quietly and like consistently doing dual care this whole time, just properly. And, we've been bumbling along and sort of trying to do it and
Mhm.
putting our own model onto things. And, we have good skills. We've got great surgical skills. We have great tech. But the deep care, the care that really matters, that carries on throughout history, the midwives have been doing that the whole time.
Right.
So
I guess the old
when I
adage, you spend an hour waiting to spend 5 minutes with your doctor and 5 minutes waiting to spend an hour with your midwife. Their model is just very different. Of course, they're not doing surgery and they're not doing high risk things for the most part, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a totally different model. It's very holistic. They look at a person and different than allopathic does. They look at the whole person. When I was in chiropractic school, they said when you step on a dog's tail, it barks. And if you're looking to zoomed in, you're going to be looking at the vocal cords and they're making noise, and that's a problem. You got to get them to stop, so you anesthetize them. And it does stop, but you still have somebody's foot on the dog's tail. So I think
Yeah.
that holistic care just kind of zooms out, and the midwives are looking at your life in general and your relationships. And are you taking care of your health? Are you getting enough sleep? And what are you eating? And are you exercising? And, have you thought about what postpartum is going to look like? And, all these things. And I remember Stu Fishbein used to tell me, he's like, I have no idea what they talk about. I can't think of more than five things to talk about with 5 minutes with my patient, also very supportive and working in tandem with midwives.
Yeah.
So they're definitely onto something. I think everybody has their place,
Well, when
and
I tell my colleagues that like my visits last for, 50 minutes to 90 minutes, when I tell them that those visits last that long, they're like, what on earth are you talking about for that long? And I'm like, honestly, everything, like truly everything. Because it's been, a month, 2 weeks, a week since we've seen each other. And so there's a ton to talk about. How have you been? How are the kids? How's your dogs? What have you been eating? How have you been sleeping? You're catching up with a friend and over coffee, over tea, in the same way that you would catch up with a friend, except your friend is your doctor. And your friend has all this, advice for you. And your friend is going to be with you throughout this really significant life experience and is going to help you prepare for this, really significant life experience and be with you every step of the way. And so I was not planning on all these developments. I didn't know how long the visits would last when I thought I'm only going to do all house calls because I only do house calls. I had no idea how long the visits would last. I was like, I don't know, maybe it'll be a half hour. It turns out they're always at least an hour. Sometimes they're 2 hours. They don't
I,
feel long.
I
They don't
just
feel excessively long. They just feel like I'm meeting with a friend.
My observation sometimes, again, I come from a medical background myself, and when I heard that people still do home birth today, I didn't even realize it was happening 20 years ago when we moved to Los Angeles. I was like, wow, that's crazy, spooky, scary. And, once I started attending home birth, I noticed something really interesting, which is that relationship between the midwife and the patient because of all the things you're talking about that you now do as well, the time that you spend in just being in someone's home, you can learn a lot about them from just being in their environment with them and seeing how it affects them in lots of different ways, mentally, physically, spiritually. And what I noticed about midwives is sometimes they'll realize something is not quite right
Yeah.
before any alarm bells go off. Like
Hmm.
just from the way that you're talking or the way your skin looks or feels or, your responses in a way that they're sometimes really able to find pink flags, things that are maybe going to become an issue long before I would see those same things be recognized in a hospital setting where somebody's, not really with their provider. There's nurses, but they're not often in the room. They're monitoring remotely. And even when they come in the room, they don't know you. They have no experience, no relationship with you. And so it just became clear to me that sometimes one of the things that makes home births can be safer than a hospital birth is that they're going to pick up things much, much earlier because of that deep, intimate relationship that
Yeah.
they have and be able to
Yeah.
address it and take care of it before you would even realize that it was an issue
Absolutely.
at the hospital. And
Yeah.
so
Before something's going to show up on a blood test.
right. And the description you're giving of going into their environment and spending all this time with them and really getting to know each other on multiple wavelengths, so to speak, is an entirely different model. It's like the polar opposite of what you were just describing.
Yeah.
How does that feel
Yeah.
for you?
It's amazing. It's just the best.
It's
I
what you
have to tell
wanted. It
you.
sounds like what you dreamed of.
It's just what I dreamed of. It works out so well. And I have to tell you, it works out so well for the patients because it works out great for me because I'm completely at ease with people. I'm completely at ease with myself. I love not being in the office. I love being able to move around. I love being able to feel like I have enough time for people. I used to feel in the office, if I did have someone who was, having a really emotional day and having a really emotional visit, and I was trying to comfort them and give a listening ear, even while doing that, if I could still feel like the waiting room piling up behind me, and it would just be making me feel almost like itchy because I knew back out in the waiting room, there were other people having an emotional day waiting for their turn, like,
Getting worse as they wait.
and I was just like, oh God, this is just, So the fact that I'm able to really give 100% of my attention to each person is just such an incredible blessing. But then additionally, like people who have other kids, people who have other obligations are not having to drive out to an office. They're not having to wait in an office waiting room for, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever. They're just waiting for me. I'm coming over to the house. If they need to reschedule, they just give me a text. If I'm running 5 minutes late, I just give them a text. If we need to meet somewhere else, we text each other. If they're at the grocery store and they can't remember if their kombucha is safe to drink, they're going to shoot me a picture of it. You know?
And also how many people could even say that they have, text connection, text access to their doctor, to their
Yeah.
OBGYN.
It
And
just works. It's just functional. It just works.
the way you talk about midwives is not typical for an OB either. Sort of, I remember when I got into chiropractic care, there was still a lot of tension between medical doctors and chiropractors. There still are
Yeah.
in large areas, but I have great relationships with medical doctors, and I feel like our patients get the best care when we work
Yeah.
together on a team. Sure,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of overlap here and there, but for the most part, we're like yin and yang, giving them the full perspective, the full spectrum of health. I
Yeah.
still feel that kind of tension between the OB community and the midwife community to a large degree. Do you find that too? I mean, are you like
I
a rebel in that way?
I feel sometimes like that exists a little bit. I think it's improving, But it's a shame because like we should be working hand in hand. We really should just be working hand in hand because we have so much to learn from the midwifery community. Like the obstetricians have so much to learn from them. And we have so much that we can offer them. So when I was in training in DC, there were in-hospital midwives that we provided medical backup for. And they were some of the first vaginal births that we saw as residents. And I just remember, being like a first year resident. I'd been a doctor for like 3 weeks, just sort of coming to the door of the room. These women who were like, midwifery patients did not want to see a doctor at the door. And I'd be like, hi, I'm Dr. Drake. I'm just here. I hope you don't have to see me again. I just wanted to introduce myself. If there's any emergencies, I'll be here on hand, So there's such an opportunity for synergy and collaboration, and it just needs to happen more. And I find so many of my good friends are midwives and doulas, and I love having that ability to collaborate. It's a shame it doesn't happen more.
I have a question. So I feel the conflict from you because of your deep, big-hearted passion for service to the community. And now the type of care that you offer is a type of care that you want to offer and the type of care that people want to receive. But obviously it comes at a higher cost and lower accessibility. How do you navigate that trade-off?
Yeah, there are times where I am able to provide discounts to folks. And I'm also trying to work with groups to work with creating scholarships. So that's another hope that I have, is that I'll be able to offer scholarships in the future.
Nice.
The other thing that I feel super strongly about is teaching. And my hope is that at some point in the hopefully not too far future, I'll be able to maybe bring a residency up here and have some ability to
give back.
Yeah, to teach and to bring my particular brand of OB strangeness to the world.
Doc, as we're winding down, just practically speaking, for somebody listening, any tips for finding the right OBGYN for you?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I find and one of the really key values is autonomy. And so I really think that finding a provider that's not afraid to have questions asked, because you will find some people that are a little sometimes taken aback by questions or maybe put on the back foot by questions. And so that to me is sometimes a concern. So if someone is welcoming of questions, doesn't find that weird, and somebody also who isn't afraid or ashamed to say, hey, I don't know the answer to that, let me get back to you.
That's a good one.
There's nothing wrong with that. And that's sometimes a thing that I feel like doctors they don't feel like they're allowed to say.
Right, we're supposed to know everything.
Right? They're not allowed to say, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to get back to you on that.
Right.
They feel like they need to be an all-knowing automaton, right?
That's a really good
one. Being okay with like, hey, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm going to be able to get back to you. Like my whole part of my knowledge base is knowing how to get to more knowledge for you. So that's, I think, a really key element.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing what goes on behind the scenes here and why the system sort of is the way it is and, ideas on perhaps how it can change. I think we're both in agreement the whole system needs a major overhaul.
Definitely.
And until then, there are going to be different models of care and each one will have pros and cons. And, you just pick a provider that has the pros for you that outweigh the cons. And that's going to be different for each person. Doc, where can we find you online?
I am at melissadrakeobgyn.com. And then I'm on Instagram at Dr. Melissa Drake and Facebook at the same.
Perfect. Thank you again for joining me. Your story is both eye-opening and inspiring, and I appreciate you helping us reimagine what sustainable patient-focused care can look like. To our listeners, if this conversation resonated with you, share it with a friend, leave us a 5-star review, and explore more pregnancy and parenting information just like this at informedpregnancy.com.
Doctor, give me the news. I got a